Wizard101 recently just banned all of their AoEs from advanced combat, which is basically PvP and raids if you are unfamiliar with that. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the good things and the bad things that will come out of that, how it's going to affect PvP, and how it's going to affect the raid system. Now, if you guys have any feedback that I do not include in this video, or just anything in general, let me know down there below in the comments. And yeah, without further ado, let's get right into things right away. So the first thing I want to say is I think a lot of the reason this happened is simply because in the first raid, everybody on Vanguard just spammed Dragoon and AoEs. And the devs saw that and they wanted to think of a solution to have players get away from that. And the solution they came up with was to just simply ban them all from PvP, from raids, and that's a very hot take on the devs side of things. I understand they're trying to, spice up the game, make it a little bit more, less formulaic, have players dive into, different parts of the game that they might not particularly be comfortable in. I see that end of the spectrum. It is pretty cool. In my opinion, it requires more thought process now because you actually have to be a bit more rational with your single hits and who you want on which team and stuff like that now, which is pretty cool in my opinion. And then the negatives to this change obviously are the fact that players are so accustomed and used to using these AoEs. The whole game is like Blade AoE, right? Or Blade Aura AoE, right? But in terms of the advanced content, logically speaking, I feel like it does make sense to stray away from that, but there are a lot of players that just want Wiz to be Blade AoE, and a lot of people will be very upset about this change because of that in the raid. Also, it is a little bit disappointing to see that Dragoon amulets are basically just useless now. The Dragoon amulet was the only thing we had in the past, well, from Dragoon, like in the past, that was viable at 160 now, right? Because all the other gear is really bad, but the amulets were good for their AoEs. But now those are obsolete as well. So that's very disappointing to see. These changes are also going to have a huge effect on the PvP economy, guys. There's going to be a lot of things that happen in PvP just because KingsIsle simply said, okay, no AoEs in PvP. Obviously, this is going to affect team PvP a lot. If you're 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, that kind of thing. This is going to be probably a pretty hard update for that community to take in, unfortunately, guys. But I'm going to be primarily talking about 1v1 PvP in the context of this video because that is what I have a lot of experience in and what most of the game is balanced around in the present day. So the most popular AoEs used in PvP are probably something along these lines. 1, Earthquake, 2, Stormlord, and 3, Scarecrow, right? So I'm going to talk about all of these in the meta right now. Earthquake is just a really good card because you can obviously kill minions with it, and you can break off all the shields and blades that somebody might be stacking in one turn. So it's a very reliable card to fall back on when stackers get out of control, right? People can stack so much in the meta to the point that counters don't matter. So having a card that can just reset the playing table when people are just stacking like crazy is extremely helpful, but that is going to be gone now. So shield stacking and blade stacking is going to be even better. This is a bit concerning because, Death and Myth are really good right now in the meta, and this change will just simply make them better. Next up, we have Stormlord. Now, this card is really good for Storm. Personally, I used to pack Stormlord and a Myth Banshee, which I'll be talking about later on in this video. But Stormlord was really good because you could do a pretty decent chunk of your opponent's health with the hit, and then you would stun and get an open hit, which was pretty solid, oftentimes a shad, right? But now you don't have that potential to break off like a set shield, a storm set shield, and then stun them and hit, right? Which is pretty bad, and you don't have that potential to do a lot of damage with a stun into another big hit. So this is a pretty substantial nerf to Storm, I would say, at least in terms of 1v1 PvP. Losing Stormlord is going to be a huge L for Storm, and everybody losing Earthquake every single school is, again, a huge deal because stacking is a problem right now in the meta of PvP. Then lastly, we have stuff like Scarecrow, which basically was allowing Death to counter Myth minions, which doesn't make any sense on their Shambo because minions are supposed to counter Death and Myth is supposed to counter Death, but Death would Scarecrow, drain off the opponent, and get so much value off of that, like minion, like the doubled egg, for example. So I guess that's one positive of this whole thing, but that's a very situational and niche thing, and your opponent can play around not going for a Yaga against a Death, right? And then obviously everything else, like Frost Giant, isn't really used. Fire Dragon, honestly, was decent in 1v1, but that's gone now too. Orthrus, not that good, but they're all basically just gone now. I think those three are the biggest three affected by the PvP meta, unfortunately, and at least in PvP, I think this is just change for the sake of change. I think um, some things are good about this update, but I think we're not quite at a balanced enough state in the meta for King Sal to be doing big moves like this, in my opinion. Let me know if you guys agree with that or not in the comments below, but that's kind of how this is going to affect PvP. Also, lastly, on the topic of PvP, I just said that like 5 times in a row, by the way, but Myth Banshee is going to be the new best hit and stun, and the demand for Myth Banshee is already really high, and it's only going to get higher for every single school now, guys. And now keep in mind, Myth Banshee is pay to win, okay? There's not an accessible way to get hit and stun Myth Banshee right now, unfortunately. King Sal could put this in the, the Marco guy in the arena, so it is accessible, but right now you have to open packs for it or talk to some sus person on the black market with like Empowers or Azoth to get Myth Banshees, which is pretty wild and not really where you want the game to be, at least in my opinion. And in terms of raids, like I briefly spoke about at the start of the video, I'm kind of torn on this. Like I do like the idea of change. However, I think they could have just probably come up with a better solution for AoEs not being as good. They're trying to make this divide damage thing work, if you saw that in my last video, but those things are just garbage. They're trash. Nobody's going to use that. It's just so freaking bad, man, Personally, like, again, at least in terms of raids, I don't mind it, but I'm not really too big of a fan of the divide, and I think this is negatively, indirectly affecting PvP, in my opinion. But let me know what you guys think about this video down there in the comments below. As always, of course, let me know if I missed anything. I don't know. It's really a weird change because I feel like half the people like it, half the people don't like it. But I've seen a lot of outrage against the bans for advanced combat. So I just wanted to make this video, talk about what I thought and what's probably going to happen in the PvP meta, and bring up the players' concerns of AoEs being gone. It's kind of a big deal, But yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. If you made it this far, leave a like and sub, and I will see you later. Take care, y'all.